And joining our discussion now is Michael Oren, who served as Israeli ambassador to the United States from 2009 to 2013. He's a former member of the Israeli Knesset. Thank you very much for joining us on this important night. Really appreciate it. I want to just give you an open opportunity to react to what you have heard from President Biden over the last 2 days and the situation that you're living through there now.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you for having me on. This has been an extraordinary broadcast. The remarks by Doug Emhoff, by Congressman Goldman, and your remarks, Lawrence, have touched me deeply, and I'm sure they will touch the people of Israel very deeply at this grim and very determined time. We are determined to defend our homeland, to defend our people, to return and rescue those hostages. It won't be easy. It's an extremely complex situation from a humanitarian point of view, certainly from a military and strategic point of view, all along. I've been involved in U.S.'s relationship for many, many decades, both as an historian and as a practitioner, as a statesman. And I've lived through many presidential addresses by many presidents who we would define as pro-Israel. I had never heard a speech like the speech given by the president last night. What can I say? We were teary, all of us. The passion, the connection that he made between his personal suffering, and here's a man we know has suffered, has lost a wife and 2 children, and the suffering of the people of Israel, his categorical condemnation of terror, his unequivocal support for our right to defend ourselves. And then there were the strategic aspects of it, which I was surprised about, frankly, where he talked about not only was the United States going to provide vital munitions to Israel without our even asking for them, by the way. Usually you have to go and ask the United States during conflicts, can we have that type of munitions, that he was willing to move naval forces. Lawrence, this is very key at a time when there's probably only one issue that receives bipartisan support in Washington, and that's the opposition to foreign entanglements, particularly in the Middle East. Here comes the President of the United States and says, I'm moving these major naval forces opposite the coast of Lebanon, which is, of course, host to Hezbollah, an Iranian proxy terrorist, and also to the Straits of Hormuz at the entrance to the Persian Gulf, basically saying to both Hezbollah and its Iranian bosses, don't you dare. And you heard the Secretary of State Blinken saying the same thing. He's saying, don't. That's an extraordinary move and quite surprising for me. And then, yes, there was a caveat, and the president in his remarks to the American Jewish leadership reiterated the caveat, which is we are going to give you this green light to do what you have to do to defend yourselves and to rid the Gaza Strip of Hamas, but we expect Israel to act as the American army acts according to law, which is code for saying, please do your utmost to limit civilian casualties, and Israel will and is doing it now. When we bomb areas that have civilians in it, our pilots leaflet. They have these knock-knock things, or these bombs that have no explosives in it. They hit the roof, and it lets people in the building know that building could be targeted, and they leaflet in the SMS texts as well. So we're certainly going to do that. It's going to be complex, as I mentioned, and it's important that the president reiterated what he's basically saying. I think there was kind of a code. He says, I'm going out on a limb here. I'm going out on a limb in terms of American politics. I'm going out on a limb in terms of my party, and help me help you, he's saying to Israel. And I got that message, and other Israelis got that message last night, too. He didn't actually have to reiterate it so literally to the American Jewish leadership. So it's a remarkable moment in our relationship. And again, I have the historical and personal perspective. I actually have never seen anything like it. And I was very moved by it. Having said that, we are poised. We are poised probably to have a major ground incursion into Lebanon, Freudian slip at 5 a.m, into Gaza. But that could trigger a multi-front war. Hezbollah will be hard-pressed to remain on the sideline if Israel is engaging in that type of incursion. Right now, we're enjoying tremendous amount of international support because of the suffering our people have experienced. And everybody here, Lawrence, knows somebody, many people who have been kidnapped, killed, dismembered, beheaded, everybody, including my family. But that could change if there are large numbers of Palestinian casualties. The narrative could begin to change. And I do a lot of interviewing on the international media, and I tell you, there's already some shifting there. And we have to be very careful about that, the best we can. At the same time, We have to defend ourselves. We have to do our utmost to return the hostages. We're dealing with a vicious, barbarous enemy that does not value human life, not our life certainly, but certainly not of its own people. It's going to be using its own civilians as human shields. It's going to be using these hostages as human shields. And so the challenges here are myriad. They really are. We have no choice but to meet them.
In an article in the Forward in the Jewish newspaper, I read about some of your own personal suffering. You talked about the rabbi at your daughter's wedding. 2 of his sons killed on the first day in military service, first day of this war. You've already been to a shiva for a 19-year-old member of the Israeli border police, a woman who was killed. Talk about what it means in Israel now, the closeness of everyone to these events. I'm sure there's no one who doesn't have a story similar to yours or worse, and family member being lost, and how in a certain sense the whole country is sitting shiva now.
The whole country is sitting shiva now, and that's a very accurate description, Lawrence. Thank you. This morning, my daughter calls up and says that there's also a woman who studied karate with her, grew with her. She was in her scout troop. She, her husband, 3 beautiful children were all massacred. One of my best friends calls up today crying. She is a very strong-willed woman. You know, she's not given to expressions of emotion in this way, crying because she has an 18-year-old son who's fresh in the Army and has just finished his medic course, and they sent him to collect bodies at Kfar Aza. But not collect bodies, collect body parts, limbs, heads that all been chopped off. And she said, I've lost my son. I sent him off as an innocent little boy. He's come back something else. Even his voice has changed. The psychological damage here is incalculable. The physical damage, yes, 1,200 people. That is roughly 15, 16 times proportionally what America lost on 9/11. Be the equivalent to about 40,000 Americans being killed over the course of about 24 hours. Just that type of magnitude. But it's the psychological impact, and that we were so vulnerable. And, you know, already there's bits of blame being passed around. There'll be a time for blaming, not now. There'll be investigative committees and find out, okay, what went wrong. Right now, we have to focus on uniting. And the good news is, if there's any silver lining to this, you know that we've experienced now about 9 months of very severe schisms in this country, political schisms, opposition to the government's judicial reform, left, right, Jews from Eastern background versus Jews from Western backgrounds, religious, secular, very deep schisms. All of a sudden, everything's coming together again. We've rediscovered ourselves as a nation, and we have a national unity government tonight, where the principal opposition party, the blue and white of Benny Gantz, has joined with the Likud-led coalition. And so that, I guess, is a silver lining. The terrorists have forced us to come together again and remember who we are.
Ambassador Oren, could you stay with us across the commercial break? I just have one more question I want to ask you about, which is that we heard the president say today that he's known Bibi Netanyahu for 40 years. He has also known you for 40 years. And I would love to get your assessment of how these 2 people, these 2 men, can work together in this crisis. We're just going to take a quick commercial break here. We're going to be back with former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. We'll be right back.